Right, so Keir Starmer's Labour, they got their way on their ceasefire amendment, didn't they? They convinced the Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay, Hoyle, to let their amendment stand, bidding off a standing order to do so. The SNP got shafted, firstly because it was their opposition day that Labour's amendment ended up hijacking, and later when the Speaker offered them an emergency motion to make up for it, they got shafted again when the Speaker refused to accept it. Democracy has been completely trashed, and Starmer even had the temerity to thank Hoyle on his way out of the chamber last week for his part in playing into Starmer's pro-Israel leanings. Labour's call for a ceasefire, of course, the only thing that actually passed last week, their amendment, stripped out accusations of war crimes against Israel, despite a plausible case for that being ruled on by the International Court of Justice. Blame for Hamas was slotted in, despite the fact they have stuck to previous ceasefires, and it is Gaza that is overwhelmingly on the receiving end right now of atrocity. So Labour's call for a ceasefire is a weak and quisling affair, and now by Labour's actions since, even that is proving to be completely dishonest too. Right, so as regular viewers will know, I've been covering the fallout and the aftermath of last week's botched opposition day called by the SNP, which functionally turned into a Labour opposition day when Speaker Lindsay Hoyle bent the rules to allow Starmer's Labour an amendment when normally they would not get one on such an opposition day. This has led to the SNP being screwed over not just that once, but twice now. A motion of no confidence in Hoyle has now been signed by 88 MPs, and trust in him maintaining order is in the bin amongst a great deal of the general public as well. How can he ever be trusted to be at the heart of our democracy after what he has done to help Starmer, help Israel, and deny elected representatives of the people of Scotland their voice, along with the voice of everyone across the country wanting to see Israel censured and a ceasefire for the people of Gaza? But this story isn't dying down, because if Starmer truly wanted a ceasefire, the actions of his party since don't match that one iota. Labour MP Harriet Harman appeared on Good Morning Britain this morning to discuss the threats MPs have apparently been receiving now, something very much weaponised by Speaker Hoyle to justify his rule bending, because he never mentioned such threats when he bent the rules, only bringing them up as part of his apology to the House of Commons afterwards, making it all very hard to believe. This is what Harman had to say on the matter of Labour not backing that SNP motion.
The SNP are proposing an immediate ceasefire. Why couldn't Labour just vote for that?
Because there were certain differences in our motions. Our motion wanted to absolutely condemn the terrorism and call for the hostage release. Their motion had condemning Israelis for what they describe as collective punishment.
The SNP proposed an immediate ceasefire. Why couldn't Labour support that? Because there were certain differences, like immediacy for one, like blaming Israel for their part, by acknowledging the ruling of the ICJ, by making it clear this is a genocidal war. It is not two sides equally committing atrocity. We're talking about a Hamas incursion on one night being revisited upon Gaza with 4 months of relentless, indiscriminate bombing from one end of the strip to the other, the surviving people with nowhere left to go, and tens of thousands of Gazans already dead, mostly women and children. That's what the SNP wanted an end to in actuality. That's what Labour couldn't bring itself to agree with. Collective punishment. My God, we've been witnessing it for social media for months. This genocide has been playing out in real time. For the first time in history, this has happened. And the arrogant dismissal of reality is infuriating, to say the very least. That's the net result of Starmer's motion succeeding, though. Nothing changes. It's all just words. Starmer, incidentally, for his part in convincing Hoyle to break the rules, has been referred to the Standards and Privileges Committee. Harman, unfortunately, is the chair of that committee, and you just know that if she's prepared to go on morning news rounds and shill like she did there, she'll do her damnedest to get Starmer off, though whether she's able to succeed in that obviously will remain to be seen. But even what Harman said Labour wanted there doesn't match reality, because as I said a moment ago, it is all just words, and nothing proves that more than Labour still suspending members, even councillors, as this case shows, all because they have called for a ceasefire still, which Labour in Parliament has done. We mustn't forget, they've actually voted for that now. Now, I've spoken of the suspension of Lambeth Labour councillor Martin Abrams previously, late last year, following that first ceasefire vote the SNP triggered last November. Abrams is Jewish, he's opposed to what Starmer has been doing and saying, and made claims that he was actively being deselected by Labour to stand again in Lambeth because of his pro-ceasefire stance. He spoke out on this at the time, saying, "There are strict diktats being issued from the very top of the party down which have created an ice-cold, chilling effect with the aim of silencing any and all debate on the current situation in Gaza and any support for the Palestinian people. I have been particularly outspoken on the horrors taking place in Palestine and Gaza and the Labour leadership's shocking refusal to call for an immediate ceasefire, and as a result there are now clear attempts to deselect me as a Labour Party councillor for my views." Wow. This week, following Starmer formally backing a ceasefire, though heavily caveated to let Israel off as much blame as possible, as their version of a ceasefire does, Abrams has not only been deselected, but suspended indefinitely from the Labour Party. And he wasn't alone in getting censured for opposing what Abrams has called one of the greatest crimes of our age, as 3 other Labour councillors earned themselves suspensions too, raising further concerns of Labour's racist attitudes, since these included Black Lambeth councillor in Sonia Winifred and a Hindu councillor in Deepak Sardawal. They've been suspended for 3 months, and Portuguese councillor Serena de Silva has been suspended for 2 months, all for backing a ceasefire which Labour in Parliament voted for. So why then have these suspensions not been overturned, not binned as ridiculous and overruled by London Labour? Well, the only conclusion we can draw, and this is far more believable than Starmer actually backing a ceasefire and meaning it, is that it's all a big fat lie, all designed to basically wreck the SNP's attempt at censoring Israel. And that is actually all Labour sought to achieve at parliamentary level. This is a Labour Party happier to be ignoring genocide than have Labour members or representatives dissenting over it. Abrams has issued a statement to his constituents. On Monday night, I was suspended indefinitely from Lambeth Labour Group for breaking the whip after I voted for a motion that called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza at January's Lambeth Full Council meeting. As someone with a small platform and as a councillor with a very diverse ward with sizable Muslim and Jewish communities, I have been consistent in condemning the horrific attacks by Hamas on October 7th. But I have also been clear that one crime does not justify another, and I believe in Gaza we are witnessing one of the greatest crimes of our age. As someone from a Jewish background, I have found the past 4 months to be emotionally challenging, both personally and professionally, amid the constant stream of horrific images coming out of Gaza. As a parent myself, the images of children killed or maimed in the Israeli bombardment have had a terrible impact on my mental health. My suffering, however, is incomparable to the pain, loss and suffering that people are facing in Gaza as I write this statement. Over the last 4 months, I have had countless conversations with local residents in Streatham about the war in Gaza. I have responded to dozens of emails. I've been to Friday prayers at the local mosque and Erev Shabbat at the local synagogue. I've been to vigils with the Jewish community calling for the release of Israeli hostages, and I have been on Palestine solidarity marches. First and foremost, I have listened, and the vast majority of people I have spoken to want an immediate end to the violence, and that is reflective of the country and the Labour Party membership, with the latest polls showing 66% of voters wanting an immediate ceasefire and 89% of Labour Party voters. My vote for the ceasefire motion was a matter of conscience for me. My great-grandparents were persecuted and driven from Eastern Europe over 100 years ago in the pogroms of Kiev and came to this country as refugees with nothing, leaving and losing many close family in the process. It is exactly this history of persecution of my close ancestors in Europe over the ages that meant I was brought up to always stand with the oppressed and against oppression. And when I say never again, I mean never again for everybody. I will continue to serve as councillor for St Leonard's Ward and continue to work tirelessly for every single member and resident of our vibrant and diverse community of Streatham. It doesn't matter what creed, colour or religious persuasion you are. Despite Labour backing a ceasefire on a parliamentary vote, nothing's changed at all. Labour can again just point to backing one, but won't actually do anything to work towards one actually happening. And when they are still suspending councillors, including Jewish ones who happen to also vote for a ceasefire motion, for meaning it when they say they want a ceasefire, you know nothing has changed. Starmer did what he did, got Lindsay Hoyle to do what he did, on the face of party conduct since, for no other reason than to again shield Israel from blame whilst it carries on committing a genocide. We need many more Martin Abrams, and we definitely need one fewer Keir Starmers. Solidarity for all those speaking up for an end to the bloodshed. In no meaningful way will that ever come from Labour. In fact, they and the Tories are right now equally bad at whipping up significant anti-Muslim sentiment, fearing for their own backsides amid claims of a terrorist threat that I'd really like to see evidence of, given Hoyle suddenly coming up with that as an apparent reason for his rule breaking, but also because the Islamophobic attacks have ramped up once more. Further distraction from what is happening in Israel and Gaza, as this video recommendation will explain all about, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.